immunity conferred on the Vice President, governors and their deputies has passed for second reading in the House of Representatives. The constitutional amendment bill, sponsored by Honourable Solomon Bob, was passed at plenary yesterday. Leading the debate, Bob said Section 308 of the 1999 Constitution conferred immunity on the President, Vice President, governors and their deputies, exempting them from criminal and civil prosecution while in office. The lawmaker stated that the bill sought to alter the Constitution to remove the immunity conferred on the Vice President, except when acting as President, state governors and their deputies, and to qualify the immunity conferred on the President. Proponents argue that this move will curb impunity, deter corruption, and ensure that public officials remain accountable for their actions. Another landmark bill proposes the separation of the offices of Attorney General from those of the Minister and Commissioners for Justice, with the aim to insulate the office of the Attorney General from political influence. Another bill is to grant citizenship rights to foreign spouses of Nigerian women. Several bills on the table, so many discussions to be had, leading with, of course, a discussion around the removal of immunity for Vice President, governors and their deputies. Rufai, over to you.
I mean, very welcome development. I hope it passes till the end. I hope all foreseen forces does not force it out. I made a quick search this morning to see many developed countries of the world that do not have immunity for their leaders. And I think we should not even stop at this point. We should go up to the president. United States does not explicitly grant immunity to the president for criminal acts. United Kingdom, the UK, lacking the codified constitution, does not explicitly have immunity clause for its prime minister. Germany grants immunity to the federal presidents only for a duration of their term, which is largely ceremonial anyway, but the real people in charge, the chancellor, head of government, enjoys no explicit constitutional immunity. France grants the president immunity from prosecution during the term for acts related to official duties. This protection ends upon leaving office. So, across the board, 3 of the 4 biggest nations and big economies do not have express immunity for the president. Why can't we have the same in Nigeria? Because this immunity clause has shielded all these political office holders from prosecution while they go ahead doing their shenanigans. In fact, I recall a case in 2015 or 2015-2016 period when the leader of the Senate president then, was being persecuted and he had to face Code of Conduct Bureau. I think somebody unmuted the idea that you should even have immunity for Senate president. I'm like, no, that should not be the case. Because they are political office holders does not mean they should not be held accountable. Because the reign of democracy, like I said yesterday, has now become a reign of the criminals in our country, sadly so. These are people that are running away from prosecution in so many ways. These are the bad lawyers from other climes that are coming to do politics in our clime. And to be able to articulate my words, somebody sent me something very profound yesterday, and I have to read it out. It was a quote by Plato. By Socrates, beg your pardon. And Socrates was very apt in that quote as regards what is happening to our political class today. And that's why I totally support this bill if it can pass, where he was talking about the fact that criminals will want leadership positions and democracy will give it to them. Scoundrels will want leadership position and democracy will give it to them. And it will get to a point that their own reign of impunity will be more than dictators. Secondly, I want to talk about that local government bill. It was something President Tinubu had fought for, to be able to rationalize and ratify those 37 local LCDAs. So I'm happy it's finally getting the chance, because I have always argued for the economic importance of Lagos. Lagos should be allowed to have more local government. Then President Olusegun Obasanjo never believed in it, fought now President Tinubu so much, and then we sided with President Tinubu. We supported him on that. Because the argument has always been, if some other parts of this country can have as many local governments, why can't Lagos have the same? With the economic importance of what Lagos brings to the country. So I'm totally in support of that. I yield the floor.
Okay. I seem to have a slightly different opinion on some of the key issues. First, Section 308. The intention of the framers of the Constitution is to ensure stability. And that Section 308 of the 1999 Constitution says that the persons occupying the positions of president, vice president, and governors, and I think it's extended to their deputies, shall not be, arrested or taken to court, forced to appear in court, while they are occupying that office. The reason for that is that if you say that that Section 308 should be vacated, then what we are going to have is complete anarchy. In those countries where you have exceptions, I had to eat South Korea. In Korea, even if you are a sitting president, you can be arrested and you can be sent to jail, as you have seen in recent cases. But these are countries, whether it's Germany or it's the United States, where is the governors actually that do not enjoy immunity. But they can be investigated. Even in Nigeria, the governors and the deputies, the president and the vice president can be investigated. But the moment they leave that office, they become liable. So the whole idea is to ensure that there is stability within the system during that period. What we should be asking for, as we have in other jurisdictions, you have strong institutions. That's number one. You have two, a leadership recruitment process that is very strong also. It's not all kinds of charlatans who get into special positions in those other countries. The scrutiny level is very high. Here in Nigeria, anybody can just walk in from anywhere after printing posters and having a godfather and become whatever and enjoy immunity. I think Nigerians are concerned because of the problem we have had with people leaving government, and we hear all these reports about how much the governor made away with, what happened to the deputy governor. If you remove that immunity, you are even going to strengthen dictatorship. To the extent that you can just have a governor who does not like the face of his deputy governor, we say, look, go and investigate him, go and arrest him. In a country where abuse of power is routine, you can have a president who can just sit in Abuja and remove any president, any governor in any part of the country, and he will justify it on the basis of what Honorable Solomon Bob is recommending to be the amendment of Section 3 of that Section 308. That Section 308, as it is, already provides for what he's saying. What it does not provide for is for anybody in those sitting positions to be arrested or to be disturbed, distracted with court cases. Add to this, look at the case of these lawmakers. In fact, it's the lawmakers themselves who should do their oversight functions. In the state houses of assembly, we see that our constitution provides for oversight by the legislature, but this same legislature, they don't do their oversight. They are all in the pockets of the governors. The National Assembly is in the pocket of whoever is president. That is the real problem that we have. Who is holding these elected persons who are granted immunity accountable? That's number one. The second bill you mentioned is the one proposing that there should be a separation between the office of the Attorney General of the Federation and the Minister of Justice. And I say I agree, because I've argued along those lines, and others have also argued along those lines. The Attorney General of the Federation, his position is recognized in the Constitution. It's a constitutional position. The Minister of Justice is a political appointee, he's a politician. Now, how do you merge the two? Between being Chief Law Officer of the Federation and being a political appointee who is answerable to the President. What we have seen with that office is that there's always that confusion between both positions. So if there is a proposal to separate, I support it. Number three, the 37 SCDAs, the 37 SCDAs in Lagos State. Now, I refer you to Lin Kuan Yew in his book, From the Third World to the First. One of the things he observed there is that in West Africa, particularly Nigeria, political leaders make laws to serve their own personal purposes. And I don't think that President Tinubu, who was governor of Lagos State at the point those SCDAs were established, and he was denied the opportunity to write them into the Constitution, to have them in the Constitution, will now, as president, say, well, now I'm president, I can do what I like with the SCDAs. That again may lead to chaos. Other states too will say they want more local governments. But I know that at that time, the argument was about justice, equity, fairness. When you will have certain states in the north having more local governments and collecting more money. But the optics that is now President Tinubu as president that wants to force that through raises that question about, using your own opportunity to serve your own ends.
Thank you so much. Gosh, there's so much to unpack because over the past 2 days, we have over 80 bills that have scaled to second reading, which for me made me think that maybe the National Assembly is employing somewhat of a Donald Trump's media blitz strategy. What's the media blitz strategy? Let out so many policies simultaneously that one, opposition is unable to coordinate itself. Number two, we as the media are unable to give the necessary detailed scrutiny to each and every one of them. However, we will do our best. Beginning on the issue of immunity, it was Woodrow Wilson who said that it is one of the remarkable things about the vice president that it is hard to find in sketching the government any proper place to discuss him. And this seems to be the case again when I look at this issue of vice presidential immunity, because why isolate the vice president, the governors, and the deputies? If we're going to say that elected officials in Nigeria do not enjoy immunity, it should be across the board. There should be no separation because, after all, a president and his deputy are elected on one ticket. So, as they say, what is good for the goose should be good for the gander. Yes, the optics are often extremely damaging. I will never forget the image of seeing former President Jacob Zuma sitting in court in South Africa facing all the allegations of state capture. Of course, it was after his term had finished. However, the optics are, some might say, are important because leaders should know that nobody is above the law. Others may say that these optics are a little bit difficult for a nation to recover from because, again, it's difficult for a nation to be able to recover from that stigma of being corrupt, from that stigma of not being in an environment that is that creates accountability and that creates checks and balances. However, one of the key arguments around keeping immunity for the vice president specifically is the issue of separation of powers, which Dr. Abati has unpacked. Because ultimately, giving immunity creates that stability, that creates almost an insulation that says that the judiciary cannot interfere with what happens in the executive. Unless we are saying that we're ready for the judiciary to be used, because again, there's a conversation around how strong is the institution of our judiciary? How independent is it? How much credibility is there? So until all of those conversations are resolved, it's difficult to move one piece because several pieces move together. Now, very quickly, there are a number of other bills that as I had already said, and I don't want us to neglect a major one, because when the issue of state creation was brought to the forum, to the public space, it was dismissed quite vehemently, especially by the members of the National Assembly. However, we're seeing here that 4 separate bills to create 6 states have passed into the second reading. Oke-Ogun State, Ijebu State, Ife-Ijesha, Tiga State from Kano State, and in the southeast, Olu State and Etiti State. We had these robust conversations at the time, and if you'll remember, the National Assembly dismissed it and they said it was not up for conversation. This isn't a real conversation. But here we are to second reading. 6 states are potentially about to be created. That's why I said it's a media blitz strategy where so much information is thrown at you that you will miss things that are happening. What else is included in these over 80 bills? We have the issue of moving mines and minerals from the executive list to the concurrent list. Now, this one, again, controversial, because currently we know that the governors have control over the land of their states, but they do not have control over what is under the ground. Are we ready to give governors that type of power over what is happening under the ground? Yes, people are saying separation of powers is important, but when we look at the mineral sector, it has already been playing a very controversial role because we are not yet accountable for a large number of the minerals that are being mined and exported out of this country. Will this create more accountability? Will it increase internally generated revenue? Will it increase prosperity for the states and will it promote federalism? That's a very good argument. However, we go back to the issue of accountability, we go back to the issue of corrupt practices, we go back to the issue of transparency and how we manage some of our critical resources. So there is the good and there is the bad. Now, on a much lighter note, I'll speak of the new proposed bill that allows indigents that allows people, to become indigents after 10 years of residing in a place or by marriage. A very welcome development for someone like myself, but again, a very, very controversial conversation because we know the rhetoric that is in the public space. We look at a state like Lagos State and they say, are you Lagosian? What is the criteria for being Lagosian? Robust debate needs to happen around these, again, I said over 40 bills. Impossible to go through all of them. But I'm excited that after 10 years or by marriage, I will become an indigent of Odupani local government area, Cross River State. So for me, make sure that one goes through.